Hi, friends. My name is Jonathan Gaylord, the pastor at Yadkinville United Methodist Church, and thank you for joining me today for this installment of our Modern Faith series. Today, we're learning about and talking about daily prayer and what it means to have a practice, a spiritual practice of praying daily, and even what prayer can bring into our lives. And so, I am joined today by Denise Kilgo, who is a pastor here in Western North Carolina at Summerfield Peace. And I'll put all of the links down to Denise's work and her congregation down below. But since the beginning of the pandemic, Denise has been leading a morning prayer online out of the book Common Prayer, a liturgy for ordinary radicals. And if you are local to Yadkinville and would like a copy of Common Prayer, Liturgy for Ordinary Radicals, we have several in the church library, so just send me an email and we can get you a copy of that if you would like. And I'll also put a link down below because Common Prayer does have a website that they update every day with the new Common Prayer. And so we're going to talk about the rhythms of daily prayer, what it means to be grounded in prayer. And so I'm excited to share this conversation with you. And before we get to that conversation, make sure you hit like and subscribe to the channel so that you can stay up to date with all the things going on in the life of Yadkinville United Methodist Church. But thank you so much for joining us, and let's get to that conversation right now. Well, welcome everybody to this conversation for Modern Faith, where we are joined by Denise Kilgo, and she is a pastor here in the Western North Carolina Conference, and at least since COVID, the pandemic began, has been leading online morning prayer, and we're going to talk a lot about what is daily prayer. Specifically, she's been using daily prayer from Common Prayer for Ordinary Radicals, which you don't need the book for. I believe it's all online as well. And so we're going to talk about just how that practice of daily prayer has affected her life, and what, if any, changes she's seen in her own kind of spirituality. So thank you, Denise, for joining us today, and appreciate you giving up your time to come and talk about prayer.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan, for having me this morning.
Yeah. So kind of, I guess a softball question is, what got you into doing daily prayer, morning prayer? Was it something that you did before the pandemic, or was it born out of kind of those early days of the pandemic?
Yeah, this is a good question to start with, because I definitely am going to be a confession right now as a pastor and as a younger clergy person with younger children. My practices in having intentional prayer time were a bit scattered before COVID, just because of the demands of life, and I trying to find new rhythms and making space for that. So that's kind of my confession as a pastor, is that sometimes we're not as good at disciplines as you might think. But COVID really kind of is what drove me into making this a more consistent practice. Because I needed something to keep me grounded while the chaos of the world was unfolding with the pandemic and ever-changing news and information. And then I also, this is maybe somewhat of a little confession too, there was also a practical reason that I started doing it, was because I had never live streamed in my life. I'd never done a live video. And all of a sudden we're finding ourselves as a church needing to do online worship.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Not just streaming our in-person worship, that's a different thing, but actually being on camera all by yourself and trying to engage people. So this was also a practical way that I could get used to the streaming software.
Yeah.
And just get some practice getting more comfortable doing that through the computer.
So very, very practical reasons for engaging in at least this practice at the beginning of the pandemic. Was there anything that made you choose Common Prayer for Ordinary Radicals, or did you look at other resources, or was just this one of the ones that was just on the shelf and you said, I'm going to grab this one?
Mostly because it's one I had on the shelf and I've used it before, and appreciate the great work that it is with bringing, issues of social justice and just on the rhythms of language that they use. But then also because I could easily connect with Jonathan Wilson Hartgrove and get permission, because the thing was streaming, right? You have to worry about copyright.
Yep.
And I was incorporating typing up the words so that
Mhm.
people could join along. So I was worried about copyright. So because I have a connection with him, I was more easily able to ask him for permission, and they
Yeah.
graciously were giving permission to use it. So I also, that was another
Yep.
concern.
No, that's a very real concern is copyright and
Yeah.
uh, how that how your licensing kind of falls. But so I've used Common Prayer for Ordinary Radicals a couple times, and uh, I lean more into the Book of Common Prayer or uh, I guess higher church uh, prayer practices. Um, and so for those of you who are not familiar, and I'll put a link to this down below, but the way that Common Prayer for Ordinary Radicals, a liturgy for Ordinary Radicals is structured is that kind of each day has its own prayer. So the structure is more or less always the same, but your everything more or less, maybe not everything, but things change day to day. The focus changes day to day. And so, Denise, how is that focus changing day to day? Has that affected your own prayer life or how you kind of are able to view the world? Or uh,
Yeah, I think it's kind of both. Like, I appreciate the continued structure of
mhm,
the morning prayer. Like, there's a certain rhythm to it. So
mhm,
that's what has helped, I think, keep me more grounded. I do find comfort in those kind of regular practices,
mhm,
but then I do like that it changes. Like, there's a response every day that changes with the theme of what they've pulled
mhm,
out with their scriptures, and uh, the words that they kind of lift up from various Christians' writings.
mhm,
To me, it can be often challenging words that I need to hear. Um, and sometimes it's been very like applicable to whatever is going on in the world. It's just like God's Holy Spirit, how it kind of brings things together
mhm.
um, in ways that we don't plan for. So I appreciate this work greatly because I was using it before, but it's become even more, cherished as a prayer practice to use it.
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed in my own prayer practice is I've over, I don't know, a little bit before the pandemic started, I'd been kind of looking for different, like trying to find a prayer resource that worked for me and met all of
Hmm.
my very ridiculous criteria that I have
Yeah.
for a book. Um, and so when I kind of settled into the Book of Common Prayer, um, like that rhythm really becomes important, and you don't realize both the rhythm of stopping and saying I have to do morning prayer, or evening prayer, whatever,
Mhm.
noontime prayer, like the rhythm of carving out that time in your day, but also the rhythm of the service itself, um, is really helpful because it allows you, at least for me, allowed me to kind of slip into this posture of prayer, as the confession and the psalm and all this stuff that the Book of Common Prayer morning offices contain. And so, how is that rhythm? You talked a little bit about rhythm. You talked about grounding. How is that? Have you seen a difference in your own spirituality and your own spiritual life with that rhythm and with that grounding over the course of the last year?
I think so. In some ways it stretches me to make sure I'm still carving out that
Hmm.
time. Now, this kind of online offering of this has evolved since a year ago. It's
Hmm.
been just over a year that I started this. So my own life has changed over the course of the year. My kids' schedules for
Hmm.
when I can be available to do this in the morning, just trying out when are good hours that people would be able to join
Log
me.
in, yeah.
Yeah, like what was working for them to be able to join live, because that has also evolved. I think I started actually doing this at noon. I was still using the morning prayer
Hmm.
part of their resource, but I was doing it at noon because I thought I could handle that. But then the pandemic went longer than 2 or 3 months,
Hmm.
and it became hard to sustain it at that time. So that's when we started kind of messing with the time and have changed it. And I've had to change it over the course of the year. And some people have followed, and others kind of use it, since Facebook and YouTube archive those.
Hmm.
They just go and they watch it at a more convenient time for them. But I think even with that, it's still this intentionality of carving out time. So even if the exact time that I'm doing it has changed from month to month or every so many months, that intentionality that was still there, which is what's important about carving out the time,
Mm-hmm.
making it a priority. And then, other people get to join me in that as they can. And it's been interesting because I've picked up this at the beginning was supposed to be mostly for my own, church folks
Yeah.
at Summerfield Peace. But along the way, because I started streaming it to my own like regular Facebook profile, also, I was picking up other people that I've known in my life
Mm-hmm.
outside of our church, which has been kind of interesting to see,
Mm-hmm.
all these people converging together for this practice or how they've shared it with other people in their life and have joined us.
Yeah. So this is a thought that just came to me is I know in our church and in the churches I've served, the big kind of prayer devotional practice that a lot of folks had was the upper room, the little newsprint devotional. Um, do your folks, are they devotees of the upper room? Um, and how do you think a devotional practice like the upper room, and if you've never encountered the upper room before, and you're watching this, it's just kind of a day by day, here's a short reading devotional, and maybe I don't remember if there's like a prayer prompt at the end of it, but short devotional, some scripture, and a prayer prompt. How does, for you, Denise, how do you think that kind of practice differs from a morning prayer, daily office, common prayer for liturgy for ordinary radicals kind of setup?
Yeah, some of this might be just me guessing because I
Mm-hmm.
actually don't know. If the folks that have been joining me live or watching later, if they also do the upper room, we do give it out. Like we have it available, and I know that people have still been picking it up through the course of this year. We've made it available, with a bin outside of our sanctuary where people can come and get it, with our building being more closed. But I don't know. I kind of wonder that now that you raise it, like
Yeah.
if the same people are doing both or if it's kind of reaching different folks. My hunch is that it might be reaching different folks or
Mm-hmm.
they're using it in different ways. So like, I think upper room, at least previously, was more kind of an individual practice
Mm-hmm.
that someone would do on their own at their own time. But the daily prayer I'm trying to offer is more like a communal
Mm-hmm.
discipline happening, at the same time with others. So I think that for me, that would be like the biggest
Yeah.
difference. They both have, validity
Mm-hmm.
and importance, but are just being used in different ways.
Yeah, they just hit differently. Yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
the individual versus communal. So like I do Book of Common Prayer, but I don't like do it online or with a community necessarily. And yet like the entire phrasing of the service is we or us or our, like it's plural. And so there's still this idea that even if you're saying or praying the service on your own, you're still connected to something greater beyond you. And I would imagine that the same is true for, I mean, I'm just looking at the open page of Common Prayer. It's third person as well. So have mercy on us. Uh, we praise you for your glory. Um, whereas, yeah, the upper room definitely is more individual. And even though there are like, I don't know how many people read the upper room across the world or across the U.S., but it's not an insignificant number.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I wonder what that posture of this is an individual devotion, asking questions about me versus this is an us or our or we. I wonder how that changes our relationship to God and to the practice.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what this digital
Mhm.
worship is kind of expanding our understanding of those kind of
Mhm.
practices, because we do have people, depending on what, your church or other churches are doing, and how they're doing their online worship that they've done when they couldn't meet in their
Mhm.
building. I mean, I think it's kind of stretching that, like, even if we're not all in the same space, even if we're not all participating in whatever that online kind of digital worship is at the same time, like we are still joining together though. Like
Mhm.
if God's spirit is that big and powerful, like there is still a joining, even if I
Yep.
read my upper room devotional at 9 a.m. and somebody else does it at 11
Mhm.
o'clock, I still do think there's some kind of community being formed through that
Mhm.
practice. It's not the same as being, in the same building or in the same online virtual space, but I do think God somehow still uses that to bring people together.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of wonder as clergy if like resources like the upper room, should we be doing more to build community among the people who use that as a resource? I don't know if that's the scope of our conversation, but just a thing that pops up for me. Um, yeah.
I think it's a worthy question. I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen churches use it as like a opening to some of their meetings, their
Mm-hmm.
committee meetings,
Yep.
and they do use it in kind of communal ways, I think, in some places.
Yeah. It's like a discussion board or
Mm-hmm.
a place for folks to check in and say, hey, this is how this hit me. But um, so we've talked about rhythm, we've talked about grounding in terms of these daily practices. For you, common prayer. For me, Book of Common Prayer or Ordinary Prayer, Common Prayer. I'm right.
Yeah.
Started
I know
started
these
doubting my
names get confusing.
yeah started doubting myself there. Uh, Resources like Upper Room and other daily devotionals. So do you think what is your hope as we kind of now are looking towards hopefully the end of the pandemic? What
Mm-hmm.
is your hope going out for your common prayer practice?
Yeah, I've had to think about it because I'm like, how long could I really
Mm-hmm.
do this for? Or like how long is it sustainable for? And I already know like if I'm doing this into the summer, I'm gonna have to adjust the time because of my kids'
Mm-hmm.
schedule with care, with their day camp and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think I'm gonna keep it going. Because I've found it keeps me accountable also to my practice because I'm making it kind of public in a way,
Yeah.
people joining. So not only is it hopefully bringing people together and receiving prayers of others and praying for them, but it also keeps me accountable to doing it. And I've told my folks this before, my church members. I've admitted to them several times that even if I have to change the time, I'm stubbornly doing it because I need it as much as they need it.
Yeah. 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 I don't know how if churches realize that half the things pastors do, we do because we need it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we're in need just as much as they
Yeah.
are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, accountability is a great reason to look at a daily prayer practice or a daily communal practice, especially. And I know there are a couple different places online that you can find. Obviously yours and a couple other folks who are doing different or different morning prayers or evening prayers. Um,
Mhm.
so one of the things I noticed at the beginning of the pandemic, especially, was there were a lot of people who started doing morning prayer or daily, offering some sort of daily prayer service like Common Prayer or the Book of Common Prayer or whatever their denomination's resource was. And very quickly, a lot of those services kind of disappeared off of Facebook or YouTube. And I asked one of my friends who had started off doing an evening prayer uh, Facebook Live why he had stopped. And he said, well, just nobody was logging in to
Mhm.
do it. And so what kept you going? Because I assume that there were days when it was you live streaming alone. Uh, what kept you going in this process and in this practice?
Yeah, I think some of it because there has been days, and I use a program called StreamYard, so it shows me even though I'm streaming like to three places at the same time, it shows me like the total number of viewers,
Mm-hmm.
and at times it is zero, and it does get a little like disheartening for a moment of like am I doing? But it kind of questions then like am I doing it for recognition or am I doing this because I need it also? Um, so I think for me it's because the people there's been a kind of a core group that occasionally maybe they're not doing it as often as they did in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder for them to commit to doing it every single day, but they still show up or they still message me prayer requests to join them in praying for.
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know, just like I think it's back to like I'm just stubborn and I need the accountability. Like that I think that's probably what's going to keep me going. Personally, this is, I've been going through this, messy separation towards divorce. So it's been even more important to me to have something that's consistent and keeping me connected to God and to other people in prayer. Because I know that my folks have been praying for me, my church people. So yeah, I think it's just the stubbornness and the need for accountability is probably going to keep me going. And I do enjoy it. Like for me, it's a nice rhythm to start my day. Doing that as like the first thing that I do.
Mhm.
Again, the times might have to shift depending on the time of year with my family schedule, but yeah, I think I'm going to keep it going, at least for now. We'll see how it goes.
Do you think you might move to some sort of hybrid where you're not always live streaming it, where you're doing it, offering it in person, or?
I haven't thought about that, but it's probably something I need to start thinking about. Because I'm starting to think about, hybrid worship for Sunday mornings.
Yep.
And how do we do that well and not just be streaming something for passive watching, but how do we engage the people online? So yeah, I haven't wrestled with the daily prayer. I guess for now it might just stay online until I can figure out if there's a better way to encompass, in person. And it would be nice because sometimes the responses, it can be awkward on my side to lead because I have to say like the leader part and the response part. And I kind of miss like hearing other people. Voices. Yeah. So that would be nice to hear again, the responses by other people.
That not just the spiritual or virtual communal aspect, but like the physical communal aspect of these services.
Or hearing other people pray during the praying time for others. Yeah. Like not just my voice audibly lifting up everybody's prayer requests, but they would have opportunity to do that. I mean, I know that they're doing that on their own, but again, like the in-person, getting to hear it.
The physical, tangible aspect of prayer that
the like embodied experience with, or incarnational experience with other people.
So is there anything, as we've been talking, thanks for the great conversation, is there anything that's come up for you that I haven't asked you that you want to plug or share about the process of doing this common prayer for over a year now, I guess?
I don't know. I think just like thinking through anything new that you do, sometimes it kind of evolves and morphs and you have to try new things. And sometimes things don't work as well as you thought, or you might try something new, or go with what is working. I'll just say I'm grateful for the writers of Common Prayer Liturgy for Ordinary Radicals for being so gracious to let churches, because I'm not the only one. I know that there's other clergy and groups using this in similar ways out there, but that they were willing to allow permission for us to do that, and that they actually kind of encouraged it. So I'm grateful for that. And yeah, they have their website for the book if you don't have it, which is helpful because then I can plug, like if I'm not meeting this day for it, you can go do it on your own.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that did change. I used to do it Monday through Saturday, and then I realized I just needed like a day to not lead something. Doesn't mean I'm not praying, but it means
not
just not
I'm
lead
not in
something.
charge of this today.
Yeah.
There's a question for me that just popped up, and maybe we'll go out on this.
Okay.
So I think that Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, you've now been doing this for more than a year.
Yeah, it was like a year, like a week or two ago.
Okay. So now you've done a week of, essentially you've gotten all the way through their cycle and you're back at the beginning. And maybe this is a question for like 3 or 4 months from now, but you're reading and doing the same service again. And so have you noticed, and I guess like this would be, you'd have to reach back into where we all were at the beginning of the pandemic and try to remember through that haze. But have you noticed, has anything stuck out at you this read through over the last week from that material that you read a year ago and might not have hit you in the same way?
Yeah, I can't think of it like an example, like specifically, but I mean, I think that's how we always read scripture. Like our life has changed, things have happened to us, or we experience different things. And sometimes it just hits us differently, or we have some kind of, epiphany moment of like, I never noticed that before. Or was that story really in the Bible?
Yeah.
Like I thought, I don't remember that one being
Yeah.
there.
Mhm.
um, Sometimes, and then it goes the other way too. Like sometimes there's more familiar, like some of the responses that they have for each day. You know, sometimes I may not remember some of the other parts, but those responses, they come back to me
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, I remember saying that one.
Yep.
Like it sticks out to me for some reason. So that familiarity is also there on the flip side.
Yeah. It'll be interesting if you keep doing this for another year.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of what that the second experience is versus the first
Yeah.
experience is. There'll be change over the course of this year, just like there was change over the course of the last year, and
Mm-hmm.
and also we'll kind of hopefully move into some sort of whatever post-pandemic is
Yeah.
going to look like, where anxiety gets to come down a little bit, and just kind of the differences in life that we live. um, so it'll be interesting to see, like, as this has been a practice that has seen you, and I resonate with a lot of what you said just in my own daily practice, to see as we come out of the pandemic, how do these things that grounded us in the midst of such a turbulent time and a turbulent year, how do they change or morph or continue to ground us as things go back to whatever
Mm-hmm.
normal is. um, I think that'll just be an interesting thing to reflect on in a year and a half.
Yeah. And like the role of technology,
Hmm.
like we've had to do some of this because we weren't able to safely meet
Hmm.
in person. So like, are we gonna kind of swing the pendulum back,
All the
stronger
way.
towards,
Yeah.
yeah, or are we going to try to find a,
Hmm.
because there's been some benefits and some new things that are good that have come out, but I just, it's kind of a question in my mind of how we're going to react when
Yep.
we're not forced to do as much online or digital kind of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff that we've done here in Yadkinville, I've like had in the back of my mind, and sometimes talking to my leadership is like, okay, we're going to do this now because we need to, and also we're going to do it this way so that we can keep doing it on the other side.
Yeah.
Even if that's made things more more challenging,
Yeah.
or made us do things a very particular way that might not be the best for 100% digital, but would
Yeah.
be better for the hybrid model.
Yeah.
Yep. So it'll just be interesting seeing what the next year looks like, and we always have prayer to ground us into these services, to be that place of accountability, to make sure we're you know finding time to spend with God and to listen.
Yeah. No matter what happens, the church will still be here.
Hmm.
It may look different in how we do these practices, but they'll still be with us in some shape or form.
Yep. Well, thank you, Denise, for such a great conversation, and for sharing your time with us today. And hopefully, uh, everybody out there who's taken the time to watch, thank you for your time. And if you have any thoughts on prayer, or have any questions about what it would be like to start your own daily prayer, one of morning prayer, daily office, all the different words, kind of the set liturgy of prayer, reach out, drop a note in the comments, and we can get you connected. I'll put down below in the description links to Common Prayer, Liturgy for Ordinary Radicals, their website, and links to Summerfield Peace's uh, Facebook and YouTube, so you can go, and if you would like to join Denise and her daily prayer services, you'll have the links to those down below. So thank you very much, and thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Jonathan.